Let's start with the reducing inflammation side of this equation. Whether we're talking about systemic inflammation, which might include either neurodegenerative processes or chronic autoimmune diseases, these types of conditions have elevated levels of inflammation systemically, often throughout the whole body. Or we're talking about acute local inflammation, which might happen post-surgical or from an injury or a trauma. In either case, hyperbaric oxygen has a long history and an enormous amount of data showing that hyperbaric helps to reduce the inflammatory process inside of our body. Hyperbaric oxygen's impact on reducing inflammatory cytokines is critical for reducing this local or systemic inflammation inside the body. In addition, it even seems like almost all pressures offer this particular benefit. Even in our own research that we did, we showed that 1.3 lowered systemic inflammation and 2.0 lowered systemic inflammation. They did have impact on some slightly different cytokines, but essentially both pressures, and so therefore most likely pressures in between, would all have this reducing inflammatory effect. In addition to the fact that mild pressures and higher pressures both seem to impact inflammation in a favorable way, I would also say that if we broke hyperbaric into short-term and long-term benefits, that reducing inflammation would fall somewhere in the short-term benefits. In other words, you could already start to see changes of reduced inflammation within 5 or 10 sessions. And while that might not be enough to solve the issue, it's at least an indication that you're on the right track, and people would typically start seeing the impact relatively quickly as far as symptoms associated with this inflammatory reaction.